welcome to another edition of Live at 5. I lost count. I think we're almost up to 180. 180 with the number 18 in it is like 10 times high, like the number for life. We're hoping to get to 180, and then we can know we've survived the pandemic, right? And then we could call this a day, and then we could come out of the house. Okay, that's I don't know if I'm not looking to quit the show. I certainly enjoy it, and I enjoy being with you. Thanks for joining. If you're joining us on Facebook and you'd like to join us live here in the studio at Live in 5, either put the live in the Live at 5 and join us on Zoom. And you need meeting ID 694-348-057, and you can join us backstage where all the fun really happens. But either way, we hope you have had a meaningful week. I noticed there was an amazing news article that I just saw that I thought was very apropos, very timely. I like to try to just select some interesting, bits of news. I'm not a news commenter or pundit or anything like that, but it's definitely, we want to talk about what's timely. So I just happened to notice that there's going to be a 700 million shekel kind of COVID-related tzedakah effort made in Israel. 700 million shekels. It's actually government funded as far as I could see. And the lead tzedakah organization that's going to be in charge of distributing, this is about $215 million worth of support, is actually going to be an organization called Kolel Chabad. Chabad, we're familiar with, a beautiful, Hasidic outreach, well-known organization and group from Lubavitch in Europe. They Kolel means like how do you describe a kollel in English? It usually means a group that are dedicated towards full-time Torah study, but can also just mean a gathering of, a collection of, a group together. So this organization, as I saw in this article I was reading, is the longest continuously operated charitable organization in Israel. Amazing. And they're going to be participating in this government effort to distribute to some 200,000 families that are struggling in Israel, families of all religious walks and stripes. But this is we in America we have some government efforts. We have the CARES Act, and in Israel I don't think they've had anything as significant as this that is sought to try to defray some of the difficult financial hardship that this pandemic has caused for many families. So I just thought that was very cool that the government was combining together with this organization Kol Chabad, and it's a big effort. And I'll just mention along with that, it's I don't think that this particular effort is Purim related, but there is a timeliness to it in that Purim is a holiday. It's coming up next Thursday night and Friday. Put it on your calendar, and it is a time-honored way of celebrating Purim. There are sort of 4 mitzvahs, 4 commandments, 4 things that we make sure to do on Purim. One of them is matanos le'evyonim. It's these are all mentioned explicitly in the Scroll of Esther, in the Megillah, and it says that we on this day we give matanos le'evyonim, which means gifts to the needy. And so there's a special tzedakah of Purim. There's always a mitzvah of tzedakah. We're always out there for those to help, give a helping hand for those in need. But there's a special Purim mitzvah specific to the holiday. And so the reason I mentioned, I don't think that this 700 million shekel effort in Israel is being made on Purim necessarily, but I just saw the article today and it's being made around this time. And if you'd like to have a vehicle to perform that Purim mitzvah and to make sure that that those who can use extra financial support are being given that support this Purim, you could do so through me, through the Jewish Experience. Go to the website. It's theje.com. There's a donate page, and there you can check off the box that will allow you to make a Purim tzedakah specific donation. So I just sent out an email about it, and I've already had already thousands of dollars submitted within minutes. Mika Amcha Yisrael, you know what that means? Who is like the Jewish people, so generous, so willing to step up and to help. And if you haven't already done so, or you don't have other plans to have this mitzvah of Purim done in any other way, please do it this way so you can do the mitzvah, and that those who need your support can get it. Now, this mitzvah, by the way, is probably one of the things we ought to talk about a little bit, because even though we have another week before Purim and we have more time to talk about it, but sometimes you have to get ready. You know, you can't hear about these things at the last minute. You know, you need preparation for something holy. In fact, it's been said that preparation is what makes something holy. When you want to lend sanctity to something, you prepare for it. You know, it's not like just at the last minute, oh gosh, I've got to, you know, what kind of way to signify something of meaning, to just, you know, oops, all of a sudden just come upon it and do it. No, it's to prepare for it in advance. It's to know that it's coming, to take the time in advance to prepare for it. That's the way of conferring significance and sanctity upon something meaningful. So if you had an honored guest who was coming, you know, you would get ready. You'd probably make some food. You'd set the table. You'd clear the house and get dressed up. And when Shabbos comes, we sanctify Shabbos by preparing for it. And when Purim or any other holiday is going to come, we're going to prepare for it in advance. In fact, on the day of Purim, we have a commandment to start getting ready for Pesach. Can you believe that? One of the elements of Purim, because it happens to be 30 days before Passover, and there's an idea that, a time-honored idea, that 30 days is an appropriate amount of time to start getting ready for Passover, and that's on Purim. So therefore, we on Purim, we take advantage of the moment to start getting prepared for Passover. Now, to prepare for Purim, then, we have to know what are the 4 aspects of celebrating the holiday, the 4 mitzvahs. And so even though we could talk about them next week, we can talk about them now. We've talked about number 1 already, matanos le'avyonim, gifts to the poor, and we mentioned how you can do that. Numbers 2, 3, and 4 are, in no particular order, mishloach manos, which is another phrase from the Megillah itself, which means to send food gifts to each other. And this is perhaps the best known element of Purim, is to send each other something tasty to eat that day on the meal. And it's not necessarily have to do with being in a state of need. This mitzvah you could do even with a wealthy friend. It's not about, we don't think that they have enough to eat. It's about sending them something that they can enjoy, that you know that they'll enjoy receiving it from you, and that they'll say, well, thank you for that gift. It's a gift. A gift can be given even when the recipient doesn't need it necessarily, but they would enjoy it, they would appreciate it, and they feel that when you have given them something that they feel that you care about them. It builds up love and connection. We've spoken about this before, that the Hebrew word for love and connection, ahava, is from the Hebrew root word hav, which means give, which means that the way that you build up love is to give to someone. The most famous illustration of that would be, if we think for parents and children for a moment, who loves who more? We won't give you the quiz, but research shows that, and I'm in the middle, because I have parents and have children, so I am in the middle somewhere, and I can tell you from both perspectives, I am sure that the parents love the children even more than the children love the parents. Now, you'd say, well, how could that be? That the children have received so much from their parents. Don't they love their parents so much? But that's not the way it works. It's giving that is what engenders the love. So the parents love the children even more than the children love their parents, because the parents have given everything. They've given so much to their kids. Receiving isn't what makes love. Giving is what makes love. So therefore, when we give a gift, even to someone who doesn't necessarily need it, if you give them a basket of food, a bottle of wine, a chocolate bar, or whatever little, Purim treat you decide to give, mishloach manos, you are building up your sense of love for that individual, and you do so by gifting something to them. And so that is one of the other 4 that it's mentioned. That's the way that we celebrate Purim. Way number 2 is gifting food to friends. Now, there's an interesting nuance of numbers 1 and 2 of the 4. Okay. If you look at the Hebrew phrase in which the Megillah tells us about these ways of celebrating Purim, the number 1, matanos le'avyonim, it says in the plural, gifts to the poor. Poor is plural in this case. And mishloach manos ish l're'ehu, giving gifts of food one to another, is in the singular. And so, but it says plural foods to a singular individual. And therefore, the way that we fulfill that is to give two particular foods as one gift to one individual. Minimally speaking, you could do more, but you could do at least two food gifts to one individual. That's the minimum way of fulfilling mitzvah number 2, mishloach mana, sending food baskets, food gifts. But when it comes to giving to the poor, it's matanos le'avyonim, it's the recipients are in the plural, and therefore we need to give tzedakah gift on Purim to not one, but at least two, potentially many more, but at least two individual recipients of the tzedakah. So that close reading has sort of defined, of course, the parameters, the minimum parameters. So minimally, you want to make sure to give enough tzedakah that it's a reasonably meaningful gift to at least two people, and make sure that either you're giving to two people, or better yet, you're giving to someone who will take care as your intermediary and give to two people. That's your tzedakah. That's mitzvah number 1. And mitzvah number 2, you personally should give to someone that you know and that they realize they're receiving from you some food, but it should be two foods. It contained two foods. And those two foods given to even to one person is the way that you do Purim mitzvah number 2, mishloach manos ish l're'ehu, sending food gifts to one another. That's mitzvahs number 1 and 2 of Purim. What's number 3 is to hear the Megillah, is to actually listen to the Megillah being read. And we actually do this both the evening of Purim and the day of Purim. So it's twice. We're going to hear the Megillah read twice. And so in synagogues, wherever Jews are gathering, or it could be done at home by yourself. If you have a Megillah, kosher Megillah, know how to read it correctly and properly, you can do it yourself. But otherwise, it's often done in groups and done at synagogues. The evening of Purim, which is next Thursday night, and the day of Purim, which is next Friday. Okay? And we've been learning through the Megillah together, studying it a little bit together and we'll move on today a little bit later to chapter 3, and we'll try to understand the whole story of Purim, the meaning of the day, the meaning of the celebration. And we get that from the story, and it's recorded in the scroll of Esther. So we have that third mitzvah of Purim to celebrate by hearing the scroll read. And number 4 is what we call Seudas Purim, which means the meal of Purim. And this is it sounds like every holiday, right? I mean, what Jewish holiday doesn't have a big meal in it? What are we going to eat after all? The theme is they tried to kill us, God saved us, let's eat. So the question is just when, it's not if, So this particular celebration of Purim is considered one of these Purim-specific parts. It's done not at night, Thursday night, but during the day on Friday. It's a daytime mitzvah. That means it's something that is specifically done during the day. And one should just have a festive meal, whatever they like. There is no obligatory foods, not like at the Passover Seder. There's not any obligatory foods, but we have some traditional foods. For example, kreplach and hamantashen. So what are these? These both, interestingly, these foods, kreplach and hamantashen, are very similar foods. You basically take some sort of a dough or a shell or a cookie, and you put stuff in it and hide it in there. Okay, a kreppel is a Yiddish word for and kreplach is the plural. A kreppel is, again, it's like a little wonton. It's a pastry almost. You could put it in your soup. You could have it on your plate, but it's like a pasta with meat inside. Typically, you could put other things in there as well. That's one thing. And hamantashen, very traditionally, these have been it's a kind of a cookie, really, and it's a triangular cookie, and it's been eaten by the Jewish people on Purim for something like 4 or 5 centuries typically, and the ingredients in it is most traditional ingredient which is actually a poppy seed spread, which is sweet and very, and that's and the word for that is actually mun, and hamantashen in Yiddish would mean tash could be a pocket, and so hamantashen would be a poppy seed pocket cookie. It's also known as hamantashen, as Haman's, like the name Haman, Haman's hat, Haman's ears. In Hebrew, it's oznei Haman, Haman's ears. And these traditional cookies have many rich relations to the holiday. In part, both of these foods, which is a little package of hidden food inside, certainly is understood to go back to the theme of Purim. The theme of Purim, as we've described it a little bit, is to reveal the hidden. The name we said in previous episodes of Live at 5 this week, Megillas Esther, means to reveal the hidden, and we're about wearing masks to remind everyone that there's something hidden beneath the surface, and God Himself, whose name is not mentioned in the Megillah, is as it were, he all year long He hides His presence, and on Purim we're trying to dig beneath the surface and recognize the hidden presence of God in our world. That's part of Purim. And so we eat foods where the good stuff is hidden inside the package. Now, at this meal that we're having on Purim, whether we're eating these particular foods or not, there is an additional element of that meal, which is very unique to Purim, which is drinking wine or other intoxicants, but preferably wine, a little more than our norm, than our usual. Fascinating. It could be that this mitzvah is a bit of a head scratcher until we sort of unpack it a little bit, because just generally speaking, if you know anything about classical Jewish life, you know that we're not a people that's into abandoning our das, our clarity of mind, our decision-making faculties. We're not into drinking too much. This is not a thing that we do. In fact, I just as a general rule, it tends to be that the Jewish people are underrepresented in Alcoholics Anonymous, because we're not over drinkers. Overeaters, that's a different story, but over drinkers not our problem as much. And generally, certainly a person who lives a deliberate Jewish life is not drinking more than their norm on a regular basis. And here comes along this holiday Purim, and suddenly we're telling you to do that. We have a commandment to do it. It's a mitzvah number 4 of Purim, is to sit down at a meal on the day of Purim and to drink a little too much. It's just a shocker. It comes directly from the Talmud, and it's a time-honored practice. And what is that about? So let's take a few minutes to unpack it, and then we'll have all 4 of the mitzvahs in Purim in hand, and we can prepare for them by going to the liquor store and buying a nice bottle of kosher wine. The Talmud says, Nichnas yayin yatsa sod, which means in English, when the wine goes in, the secrets come out. Now, you know what that means. You drink a little too much and your inhibitions go down, and you say a whole bunch of things that you may wish you hadn't said, right? You become less inhibited. And the secrets, those things that you would normally not share, come out. Now, I think that the Talmud, however, doesn't mean this in necessarily in the pejorative in this case. It really is perfect with everything that we've already said about Purim, that the idea of the holiday is to dig beneath the surface and to recognize the deeper reality of our lives, of Jewish history, of ourselves and our souls that are hidden, deeply within our external physique, and the hidden reality of God, who is basically unseen and hidden and lives beneath the surface of our world. And so Purim as a holiday is trying to thin those barriers, those walls that sometimes prevent us from recognizing the hidden deeper reality, and certainly from maybe sharing something that's letting we walk around a little bit guarded perhaps, and this is an opportunity to let out the beautiful internal person you've become your whole life and your whole year. Of course, if it's assumed that showing your true colors is going to expose only great beauty, because if you've been a person who's actively been growing spiritually and striving to be a greater and greater person, then naturally, when it comes time to show your true self, your true colors, that you have only beauty to show. And that's the part of what Purim is about, is recognizing that what's beneath the surface is very great, is very beautiful, is very holy, very meaningful, both godly and internally. It's that you have something very precious inside you. And the idea of drinking in Purim is to recognize that, to connect those dots, and to come to a greater depth of recognition and perhaps even to show that. And so that's part of what wine drinking is about on Purim. It happens to be that if you look into the Megillah, we'll see that time and time again, the Purim contains stories of wine parties. It started with a wine party in chapter 1, which we read about, and towards later on, we're going to see that Esther brings about the solution to Haman's evil threat and wicked designs against the Jewish people. She brings it all about at a wine party, and over again we see that the concept of wine in and of itself. Just why wine? I mean, you could drink other things, but wine. The idea is that the juice of the grape comes out and is even greater than the grape itself. It becomes something precious. Grape wine, is so much greater than grape juice. It comes out and it's elevated, sanctified. And that's why we use wine in so many instances in throughout the Jewish year, but specifically on Purim. So that's mitzvah number 4. And that is, and now you should have it well in hand, and you should be ready to get ready for that holiday and have it in a very sanctified way. Okay, I want to move on now to chapter 3 because we got 10 chapters to get through, and as many days, maybe even less. So basically, what happens in chapter 3 is the Megillah tells us about the terrible threat. So up to now, what we've been hearing about is the divine machinations to protect us in advance from a threat which we didn't even know was about to emerge. And it emerges in chapter 3. The threat itself is that Haman, as his name is pronounced, sometimes people say Haman in English, that Haman, who is a chief advisor to the king Achashverosh, is elevated to a position of significant prominence, and he expects that everyone in the empire will bow down to him, and one person refuses to bow down to him, and that is none other than Mordechai, significant leader of the Jewish people. This enrages Haman to no end, and he singles Mordechai and the entire Jewish people out for his wrath, and he decides he's going to come up with a plan to destroy Mordechai, not because to take him out because he's been personally offensive, but he appeals to the king and says, the Jewish people, Mordechai included, are really not a people that you should leave around. They're outsiders. They're not. The technical term is mefuzar or mefura. They are described as spread out, disunified, and distinct, separate from your empire. And says Haman to the king, therefore we should choose a day on the calendar and annihilate them. And Achashverosh says, really, what would be a good day for that worthy project? And Haman draws lots, which is Purim. The name Purim means lots. He draws lots, and the date he comes up with is in the month of Adar. Adar, the month in which we celebrate this holiday. Now, the fact that 2 chapters have already come and gone in the Megillah before we even hear about the problem. I mean, the existential threat to the Jewish people that Haman represents we only hear about in chapter 3, and yet what's already transpired, as we spoke about in chapters 1 and 2, Vashti the queen has been executed, and Esther has been put in her place, and Mordechai has been ingratiated with the king as someone who he cares about, who has saved him from the plot against his life. And these things have already happened. They've already taken place in advance of Haman's threat even emerging. And what we see is a beautiful Talmudic principle in place of the way that God runs his world. As we say that Hashem is hiktim refuah lamaka, which is he sends the solution before even the problem comes, right? The solution is in place. The fact that Esther's already the queen, the fact that the king already has a debt of gratitude to Mordechai, these will ultimately lead to the solution of the Jewish people, and they're in place even before the problem, before Haman has emerged with his evil decree. And it's an unbelievable, beautiful principle that God should run his world that way. We don't necessarily see it. Again, it's one of those hidden things beneath the surface. The Jewish people didn't realize what was happening at the time. But even before we have problems, and believe me, we have had and we have problems, but the solutions are out there, prior. Hashem sets up the solutions in advance. Before they knew what had happened, in chapter 3, the existential threat had been raised, and yet the solutions were already in place, as we'll see as we go further next week, and we see some more chapters, and we'll see how the story unfolds, and the mask is removed, and God's salvation, hidden salvation of the Jewish people, is revealed. Now, the last thing I want to do with the last 5 minutes I've got in Live at 5 is I want to talk about this particular Shabbos. This is one of those Shabboses which has a special name. It is known as Shabbos Parshas Zachor. We're going to read a special, we call it a maftir, meaning the final Torah reading of the day. We're going to read is called Zachor, and Zachor is the Hebrew word for remember. So what are we going to do? We're going to read, it's just 3 lines, and it's where the Torah says that we actually have to remember the terrible enemy that the nation of Amalek was to us in our history. We have to remember that that God, as it were, has selected them, has named them as his enemy, as it were. And we're not allowed to forget that. One of the 613 commandments of the Torah is to remember that that they are our, as it were, our sworn enemy, our arch enemy. Now, who is this nation of Amalek, and what is this remembering thing about? We're going to read these verses. We're going to remember this. What are we remembering? What's going on? And why are we doing it now? Particularly, it happens to be where it's a reading that's out of order from the normal time that we would read these 3 lines. So the basic history is like this. If you think back to the Jewish people getting out of Egypt, going out into the desert, going to Mount Sinai, and going on their way to the Promised Land, there's one major interruption in what should have been this beautiful story of the rescue of the Jewish people, and that is that right after the splitting of the sea, the Jewish people got out of Egypt, and they in this brilliant, miraculous salvation, and they're marching proudly to the Mount Sinai, and you know what happened? They got attacked. There was a war that went on. This neighboring nation of Amalek came at them in the desert and attacked them right then and there on the spot, and there was a minor war that they had to fight against the nation of Amalek. It's what's really incredible about it is the timing. What were they thinking? The nation of Amalek is going to, the sages basically summed it up by saying, were they crazy? The Jewish people were on fire. They were hot. They just came out of Mitzrayim. They came out of Egypt. 10 plagues later, a splitting of the sea, the most powerful army of Egypt, the most powerful nation and army at the time, Egypt, destroyed and decimated by a divine miracle. And you're going to start up with them? Are you crazy? What were they thinking? And they lost the war. Amalek, the Jewish people were victorious over them as well. But what were they thinking? There's an idea that this group, this nation of Amalek reflects not just a people with bad timing, but not even just an enemy of the Jewish people, but they oppose everything that God himself tried to show by taking the Jewish people out of Egypt. They didn't just attack us. They attacked the historic message of God rescuing the Jewish people in the Exodus. Today we would call that messaging, this divine messaging that God, through the Exodus, through the rescue of the Jewish people, said, I am here, I run the world, I am to be represented in the world by the Jewish people. If you're going to attack the Jewish people right then and there, you're attacking God's message. You're attacking God's presence. You're attacking the fact that God just took them out of Egypt. And God says, this is like the enemy. This is the antithesis of everything that I've just created a Jewish people for. And that is in a fascinating way, is relevant to Purim. And that's why we read it now, right before Purim, because Haman was a descendant of the nation of Amalek. And so precisely at this time, when you see how they continued throughout all the generation, they continued to fight us. Haman was a representative of the nation of Amalek who set out to destroy the Jewish people entirely. And so right before this holiday, we remember that on God's agenda is the enemy of his messaging and his goal of the Exodus and the identity of the Jewish people and everything that we are tasked to do in this world. That's Amalek is the enemy. And so that's this Shabbos. If you can get to shul, you'll hear the last three lines of the Torah reading will be that one, and we'll remember, we'll fulfill that mitzvah, and we'll leave you today with the wishes for a good Shabbos and a happy and healthy. If you're going to join us tomorrow at 5 p.m., we're going to have our Shabbos Zing at a regular weekly link. If you'd like that and you don't have it, be in touch with me. I'm happy to give you that link. And we'll see you next week, Monday on Live at 5.